Here we are with my old friend, colleague, and Hall of Famer, and the author of the best book ever written on Pete Sampras, Steve Flink. Hi, Steve. How are you? I want to know something about not just Pete Sampras and your book, but also about the men's singles draw. How are you?
I'm fine, Ubaldo. Why don't you tell me where you want to start? I'm happy to talk about either topic. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the men's singles. That for the how many years have you followed the U.S. Open consecutively? Because I have been there since 1984 without missing one, but I was there already in 1980 and I think 1981. So I've done about 38 U.S. Open. How many you?
Well, I've been to all of them except for 1970 when was in college and I couldn't stay there. I've been to all the rest and I've been reporting on it every year full time since 1974.
Okay.
So I'm sad like you, Ubaldo, that this year I will not be on the site. I'll be watching it on the television like everybody else, but I won't be on site. That's going to be a strange feeling after all these years. For you
True, true.
too.
Of course, for me
Yeah.
too, very sad, but we may, during the tournament, do our videos so we can discuss, like when we were sitting next to each other on the Ash Stadium.
Sure, sure. Why not? Why not?
Okay, so let's talk about the U.S. Open men's singles draw. First of all, well, who is your favorite? Because while in women we said that six out of the top 10 are missing, and two of the top 10 are not in great shape. The men are almost all there, apart from Rafa Nadal, who is the champion, uh, and Roger Federer, of course. But all the others, more or less, are there.
I have to pick Djokovic, Ubaldo, because he's won 5 of the last 7 major tournaments, going back to Wimbledon in 2018. So he won 2 that year. He won the last 2 of 2018. He won 2 more last year in Australia and Wimbledon, and then won Australia again this year. So he hasn't lost as we speak, he hasn't been beaten this year. I think, Ubaldo, that his confidence level should be pretty high, and he'll come into the U.S. Open very well prepared after playing the Cincinnati tournament in New York. He'll have the matches that he needs, and I think he'll have the confidence he needs to win the U.S. Open for the 4th time.
Yeah, well, then he doesn't have the easiest draw, maybe, because apart from the first round against Zumur, then he has Edmund or Bublik. Bublik is a dangerous player because he serves unbelievable, and but is not very consistent. So Djokovic will for sure get hold of him. And same thing with Struff that he has beaten recently in Cincinnati.
Right,
But
right.
then he has Isner maybe in the round four. And Isner is a dangerous player because even if Djokovic is the best returner in the world, I think, well, Isner on the good day he can beat anyone.
That's true, Ubaldo, and he has beaten Novak a few times, but I think the problem is to beat him in best of 5 is going to be very hard for John Isner. He can maybe get hot and beat him in best of 3, have just enough energy to get through it and serve well enough. But I think Djokovic in best of 5 will be more comfortable if he plays Isner. That's if Isner gets to that match. The seedings tell us he should play him in that match in the 4th round, but we don't know for sure. I still, even if Djokovic has to play him, I like his chances, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, of course, I like Djokovic chances. I would be crazy if I wouldn't. But and you know, I saw in Cincinnati playing very well Opelka, who has a problem to a knee, and that's why he had to retire against Tsitsipas. But Opelka, I was very impressed because talking about Isner, I remember when Isner was 22, 23, and everyone was talking about his serve, and they were talking just about his serve, like if he wasn't a good player in all other aspects. Then slowly but consistently, year after year, Isner became much better as an athlete, as a player, and so I expect Opelka able to go on the same path because Opelka serves even better than Isner. I tell you, I saw him against Berrettini. I was terribly impressed.
I'm not going to quite agree with you on that. I think he serves as well as Isner. I don't think he serves better. I think he serves this. I would rate their serves pretty similar. But I do say this, Ubaldo. Opelka moves better than Isner. He moves, I think, a good deal better than Isner, which is going to make a big difference in the rest of his career.
I want
Because
to give you, interrupt you because I want to give you bad news. Novak Djokovic, I spoke to him, no, I spoke to Tsitsipas, who played before Isner and then Opelka. And I asked him which one is the best server. And he said, he said, oh, tough question, I don't know exactly. Then he said, well, the second serve of Opelka is more dangerous. So and so we
Ubaldo,
can debate about that.
yes, we can debate. It's a very close call. Listen, you're talking about two guys, Ubaldo, both of them nearly 7 feet tall.
Yeah,
So they seem to be serving out of a tree. It's
yeah.
no fun. It's no fun to play either one. I'm sure that Tsitsipas would say there's not a great deal of difference. And here's the thing: how would you feel if you were Tsitsipas in Cincinnati in the Cincinnati tournament? You played John Isner to play Opelka to play Raonic next. How would you like to play three servers in a row like that? Wouldn't you be a little tired of facing the big servers?
No, I wouldn't. But I wouldn't even as a spectator, to be honest, because to watch those matches is not really fun. I mean, I watched
Well,
also Berrettini serving very well. I saw the match Berrettini and Opelka, and it was really the how do you say it, pigeon pigeon shooting. You know, I mean,
no,
it
I
was.
understand. I see your point, and it's not that I necessarily would like to see Isner playing Opelka
Oh
or
no.
Isner Raonic, but if it's one of those guys against Tsitsipas or one of those guys against Djokovic, you have a contrast. And those are the matches I think are a lot of fun to watch, to
Yeah.
see if they can find a way to get enough returns back in play and
Yeah,
hang
but
in
at the
there.
end, yeah, true. But at the end, they go to the tiebreaker,
Yeah,
and
well,
then it's 1 or 2 points that can be lucky or so that decides the match.
so what you're saying is like Reno Tomasi might have said, let's just start with the tiebreaker.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
Exa-
yeah.
exactly, and also Jimmy Van Allen probably.
Yeah, right, right. Now,
Yeah,
anyway, I'm just saying for poor Sissipas, sometimes you like to hit a few balls. You'd rather play against somebody who lets you play, gives you some rallies, and he doesn't get that when he plays those guys. But he's
yeah.
doing just fine. He's doing fine, and he's a real threat at the U.S. Open.
Okay. Listen. So. Apart from Djokovic being the strong favorite, who do you see in the top half to reach the semi-final versus him if he will be there?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Sissipas. It's just the guy we're talking about, Ubaldo. I think that Sissipas is seated fourth, so he would have to play Ramos Vinolas to start, maybe Borna Koric in the third round, maybe Lajovic in the round after that, and the quarters possibly Zverev. So I don't know. These are all matches that I think that Sissipas can win, and I think he's feeling pretty good about himself right now. So I have a feeling we could get a very exciting Djokovic Tsitsipas semifinal. What do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah, I do agree. I do agree also because I'm still very uh, perplexed about Zverev because Zverev he can play very well, but then he can make five double faults in the last 2 games when he has to serve to win a match, like it happened in Cincinnati. Uh,
Against Andy Murray. So
yeah,
right. He serves for the match. Three of those double faults were when he served for the match against Andy. That was so disappointing. What happens to him, Ubaldo, that I don't understand is the double faults are very different. Sometimes he barely swings at the ball. He gets no speed on the second serve.
yeah,
Sometimes he tries to hit it 130 miles an hour, and he misses it long. He can't seem to make up his mind how he wants to execute the second serve. I'm perplexed by him too, because I think he's a great talent,
Yeah, yeah. It's
right?
very strange. He's still very young, so he should be able to adjust. But the serve is a psychological uh,
Yes,
uh,
yes.
shot, and
Yeah.
there are some players who have never been able to overcome certain weaknesses on their serve. Think about in the women's tennis, Maria Sharapova, who could play so many double faults on a bad day. So especially the second serve, she was probably unable to control it. But also
And you
some.
remember, and let's not leave out Anna Kournikova. Do you remember all the double faults that
Oh,
she
of
would serve?
course. Well,
Yeah,
and Camilla Giorgi
yeah.
and others. I mean, I know many. Well, so it's quite complicated sometimes. Anyway, and what about the second half?
Yeah, the second half is interesting because that's where we have Medvedev, who had, as you know, had that great run to the final last summer, barely lost to Nadal
Yeah.
in 5 hard-fought sets. He's the number 3 seed, and he could potentially play Dominic Thiem in the semifinals, Ubaldo. I have a feeling we might get that match too, and that would be very interesting to see that
What
right now.
Well, Tim, honestly, was incredibly disappointing in Cincinnati because he made only 2 points when Krajinovic was serving,
Oh,
and
he played terrible. That was a terrible match. You're right.
yeah.
Obviously, he
So,
can't get away with that. He can't get away with that. But I think he'll bounce back. I hope so because we've seen Team in the finals of the French a couple of times now, and then he lost to Djokovic in 5 sets in the Australian final, and that match was hanging in the balance. Djokovic could have lost that match. So I think that Team feels he's ready. But you're right. That match that he just played, Ubaldo, was pretty poor on his part. He
yeah,
didn't return well. No
I,
returns at all.
Yeah, I think that that theme has a quite easy draw at the beginning because against Munar and then Klan or Nagal or and Cilic is not anymore the same Cilic we know.
Yeah, right.
Uh, but uh, already, if you would get to Auger Aliassime, who is pretty young but is capable to play very well. And
That would be
then,
good. That would be a good match, Ubaldo. That could be round of 16, Team against Felix, and that would be fun to watch. I think Team over 5 sets has the edge, but he'd have to play some of his best tennis to win that one.
yeah, and then we have to see if Raonic keeps playing as
Right,
well
right.
is also quite a dangerous. Of course, I will follow with a lot of attention Matteo Berrettini because he was semi-finalist last year, and in my opinion, he doesn't have a bad draw because he has first a Japanese guy Go Soeda, then the French Humbert who is good but not extraordinary. Then he has Rude who is okay, but I mean, so Berrettini, in my opinion, could reach the fourth round against Rublev, and
Yeah, what do
then.
you think about that one, Ubaldo? Sorry to interrupt. How do you feel about Berrettini versus Rublev? Very close.
Very close, but he beat him last year at the U.S. Open.
Yeah, yeah, he did. He did.
And he had won against him already once before in another tournament. Berrettini is quite solid on his serve and with his forehand. Rublev is talented, but is less consistent. He has more ups and downs. To be honest, Berrettini he has become quite solid, and even this summer,
Yeah, yes, I agree. But
yeah,
Ubaldo, what would you think about Berrettini Medvedev in the quarters?
well, then would be much more difficult. Then would be much more difficult. I think Berrettini should hope that Dimitrov would beat Medvedev, and then Dimitrov would be, uh, I don't say easier, but I mean,
Yeah,
an
I think
opponent.
I'll say it. I'll say it. I think it would be easier. I
Yeah,
agree
yeah,
with
yeah, or
you.
less difficult. Let's say
Yeah,
less difficult,
right, right, right.
which
That's a
is,
better way to put it.
yeah. Listen. So anyway,
So,
we hope.
Ubaldo, if you're hearing any noise, I want to apologize to the viewers. We're getting a big thunderstorm as you and I talk. it's starting to pass, but it's been coming down pretty hard, the rain outside here.
Oh, really? But we are not yet in the middle of the U.S. Open, so it can rain as much as they want,
Right,
as
right.
long as they don't create you fear or problems of any kind. Let's uh, let's uh, let the sky do its job. Huh?
Absolutely.
And
I agree. I agree.
I can tell you only, I have to give you a sad news. I don't know if you were aware about David Mercer, who is a British colleague of us. He was the umpire of
Yeah.
the Connors McEnroe in Wimbledon 1984, and he was also president of a lawn tennis riders association, a radio broadcaster for ATP, unfortunately 70 years old, and today he left the world. And he was a nice man. I want
He
to.
was. What was the cause? Do we know what he
No, I have
what?
no idea. I have no idea. But I just was told. I read a tweet sent by Mike Dixon announcing that David Mercer had left this world, and of course, I wish to his family all the best. My condolences.
Oh, mine as well. Mine as
Yeah,
well, and
yeah,
that's very sad news, Ubaldo. He was an interesting guy to make that transition from umpiring to broadcasting, and he
yeah,
did it. He did it seamlessly, and he was
yeah,
very good at what he did. He had a very good broadcasting voice and a real love of the game, just like you and me. So we've
yeah.
lost we've lost one of our comrades.
Yeah, correct, correct. So I wanted to mention it. And look, about this US Open, we can say, well, you may not know, but we have 10 Italians involved, which is almost a record. I mean, because
How
10
much did you How much did you have to do with that?
not much, to be honest. I just and Fognini is not going to be there. If not, we had 11. Fognini will be missing there, but he had a problem to an ankle. To he got a surgery, and he will be back for Rome, which starts immediately after the U.S. Open, and then Roland Garros. About Roland Garros, you probably know the last news. Apparently, they cannot have more than 5,000 spectators, even if the French Federation is trying to persuade the national government that since they have three different stadiums, they would like to have 15,000 in order to put 5,000 each in each of the stadiums. But I don't know if they will be successful. What are your chances to come to Paris? Are you, no chance at all?
I'm not planning to come. And personally, I guess I make the choice as every reporter does, but I wouldn't feel that safe flying over there right now, staying at the hotel, being in the press room alongside many of our colleagues. I'm not that comfortable with it so soon. I don't
Yeah.
blame the French for trying to do the event. Are you going, Ubaldo?
I think I will go. I sent Paris is closer to here. It's only 1 hour and a half flight from Florence. And to be honest, after I missed already Wimbledon and the US Open, I'd like to go. I will miss you because we were doing every night our video stand out, and for sure I will miss it. I
But
may try.
the other thing about it is that it's very difficult for us to get permission to come to Europe right now either, to fly. You know,
I know.
even if I wanted to go, I doubt I would be able to. So
Sure.
you're going to have to you're going to have to make up for my absence and
Yeah.
do twice as much work.
I know. I will have Vanni Gibertini hopefully with me, and
Yeah,
he will try to replace you, but he's bigger, but doesn't have the same experience. He's younger.
yeah. He'll do fine.
Anyway, anyway, I want before we finish, I would like to talk for a second or for more than a second about your book, the one you wrote about Pete Sampras, Greatness Revisited.
Revisited, Ubaldo.
Revisited. I have a problem to pronounce this word.
Yeah, yeah.
Revisited.
Right.
Okay. And well, how can people buy it? Through Amazon?
That'd be the easiest, Ubaldo. They go online, they go on Amazon.com. It's officially released September 1, so we're getting close.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that. And I think that the readers will enjoy it because there's a lot in there from many other players. Pete Sampras speaks quite a bit to me about his reflections on his career, but we also I got Goran Ivanisevic and Stefan Edberg and Jim Courier and Michael Chang and so many others. Novak Djokovic talking about his boyhood days of idolizing Sampras. There's a lot of material from the others explaining what it was like to be across the net from him and how much they admired him. So it was a fun book to put together. I enjoyed it.
How much did you bother the poor Pete Sampras? How many times did you chase him and stalking
Well,
Pete Sampras?
luckily I didn't have to do that. I didn't count the hours you bothered, but it was many hours because it started in November of 2018 with a couple hours then, a couple more hours in December, more the following spring, more the following summer, all the way up until last fall. So it was quite a few hours by the time we were done. But he was very generous, and he would often make good comments off what he heard the others saying about him. I could
Yeah,
go back to him and say what Ivanisevic said. This is what Rafter said. What do you think about what Courier said? And it was nothing negative about it. It was all positive, but it made him reflect in a different way. I think the readers will enjoy that. The byplay between him and his opponents.
yeah, and he must have also a great memory because he's remembering scores, I mean, or matches, and he says what happened just before, what was he thinking during the match, what was his feelings at the end of the match, and apparently was also reading the press. And the comments of the others, because as you said, he's telling what players were sometimes either criticizing or applauding him all the time, so he remembers everything.
He has a very good memory. He doesn't, it's a different kind of memory. Some of those players like Agassi and Navratilova could remember every point they played in the matches they won. He doesn't think that way, but he remembers the key points, the crucial parts of the match, how he felt going in, what he felt afterwards, and that made it easy for me. And what if he didn't remember something, I could remind him, and
Yeah.
that would help.
And then he did, I mean, you wrote about the transition from his double hand backhand to the one hand backhand, which some players at the beginning thought it was a big mistake on his behalf. No, Chang, I think he said he didn't believe that because apparently Sampras at the when he was very young, he had a very good double hand backhand.
Yeah, it's
And then for 1 year or more, his backhand was very weak instead.
Well, that's a tough transition, Ubaldo. 14 years old, and your coach, Pete Fisher, was his coach at the time. And very difficult when Pete Fisher, as the coach, says to you, I think we need to do this for the long run. If you're going to become the Wimbledon champion one day, we must change that two-hander to a one-hander. But the great part of it was he never worried about his junior results. He didn't care. He tried. He did his best. But he didn't worry about losing junior matches because he knew that he would grow accustomed to the one-handed backhand, which he did. And his argument, I think, is that as a great athlete, it was easier. That one-hand backhand made more sense for him as an attacking player, for his transition game, for his backhand volley. There were many good reasons to switch to one hand, and 14 majors sort of proves his point.
Yeah, of course, of course. I remember I'd seen him losing very badly to Chang in Roland Garros when I think he made 3 or 4 games, and I was
Three,
broadcast three.
three games, 1-1 and 1.
Okay, and I was
Yeah.
broadcasting that match with Rino Tommasi, I think, and we were, really surprised in a way because Gianni Clerici had seen him playing Chang in a junior match in at the U.S. Open, and he was convinced that Sampras was the better player. But then on clay, there was such a huge difference, especially in that moment, that we start doubting that maybe Gianni was right or not. And
Well, you know
instead,
what, you know what? That's interesting because that was 1989. Then by the next year is when Sampras, if Chang, Chang won the 1989 U.S. French Open. That was the
yeah,
great breakthrough for him. But then the next year, Sampras wins the U.S. Open,
yeah,
and he improved. He improved immensely between 89 and 90, and
yeah.
then his career took off from there. But yeah, he had some tough clay court losses in that period. Agassi beat him badly once in Italy as well, but he was a different player from 1990 on.
Yeah, and then for sure he has the best serve I can remember, especially the second serve, because he was able to save break points every time he needed. He was very strong mentally, and that's why he won 7 Wimbledon. I mean,
You know what, Ubaldo? You're right. You just touched on an important thing. He's not given enough credit for the mental toughness and the courage under pressure, the poise under pressure, and he wouldn't be afraid to serve a double fault. He would go for that second serve. He didn't worry if occasionally they went long and he double faulted. He was willing to take that risk because he knew more times than not he could make that big second serve and put it an inch from the line and win the point. He was almost like he had two first serves. Courier
yeah.
talked about that in the book. It was almost like you didn't have a second serve with Sampras. You just had two first serves.
Yeah, and then in your book you write also about his character, his personality, uh, his relationship with the different coach, with Anacon, before with Tim Gullickson that he picked after that. Tom Gullickson said, "I am not available, but I have
Yeah.
a similar face, someone who looks very much like me."
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, I found interesting what you wrote about him at the end of his tennis life, because he's dedicated to the family. He plays golf. He doesn't miss particularly either Wimbledon or the other tournament. He doesn't seem to care too much about what's going on in on the tennis world. He's not.
Oh, I actually think he does, Ubaldo. I think he cares. He watches the big finals. He loved the Djokovic Federer Wimbledon final last year. He
Yeah,
watches matches and his son plays, but the thing is that he's just not as obsessed with it as some other former players. And as you know, Courier has done commentary and been Davis Cup captain. Agassi runs a school but stays very interested in tennis. Chang has still been involved coaching. He's just not cut from the same cloth. It's not that he's tired of tennis or doesn't still love it, but he doesn't feel a need to be front and center and still be a famous figure out there. He could do as much commentary as he wanted, but he just hasn't felt the need to do it. And I
yeah.
respect, I understand that. He put so much passion and energy into the 15 years of his pro career that now he just likes to enjoy his life as it is now and not be worried about the past.
Yeah. Okay, listen, Steve, thanks a lot for your commentary as usual. I hope I will miss the US Open and you, and with together with many other colleagues and friends. I will miss you at Roland Garros, but we will keep in touch, and during the US Open, we will try to connect and through Zoom to do some comments together about what's going on.
I look forward to that, Ubaldo. That'll be a lot of fun. It'll be almost like we're in New York together, but we'll do it. We'll do it on the internet on Zoom.
Okay, so thanks a lot to Steve Flink, my old friend, colleague, Hall of Famer, and author of this nice, great book, the best book which has ever been written about Pete Sampras. Bye bye.